Alright everybody, it is once again time for our Indie Game Spotlight Recap videos. If you're new, every month we have a Indie Game Spotlight stream where we play games submitted by developers to check out, and we take a look at just about any kind of game imaginable to help raise awareness for smaller games or titles that wouldn't normally get coverage on channels. And for this part, we are going to be taking a look at the games submitted for the month of February 2020. As I said, every title you're seeing was played on press keys submitted by developers, and if you'd like me to take your game in the future, please do not hesitate to get in touch. But we got a lot of games to go through here, and we're beginning with Skullboys. This is kind of like a retro-aimed isometric action-adventure game. Think Zelda. We play as a skeleton that's been brought to life amidst a zombie and just evil attack on this kingdom. And it's up to us to wander around and save the day. The key element of Skullboys, or the key mechanic, is that our character here is semi-modular. You can pick up various swords, arms, chests, heads, etc., and they will all extend into either giving you new abilities or changing your core stats, such as some armor pieces or some body pieces will give you more health, some may be used for puzzle solving, and so on and so forth. The problem the game has is that the developer's intent on making this kind of a retro throwback also means that there's a lot of elements that just feel lacking or just don't really work as well as they should. The first is from a level design standpoint. From the footage that you've seen so far, you would assume that this game is more of an open world, more of a Zelda-like kind of design, where in actuality it is built on levels. The levels are very wide, and it's very easy to get lost in them. Now, the game does hint at you returning back to areas with a sufficient upgrade or some new part. But for the most part, you're going to be going through these levels pretty linearly, getting to the boss fight or major event, and then moving on to the next. The story, it plays more on the nonsensical side of things, and didn't really work for me, but I'm sure there may be people out there who like that kind of random, dialogue and things along those lines. But it's the gameplay itself that hurts Skullboys the most. Combat is on the floaty side of things, and one of the major points is that the whole part system doesn't really come together as well as it should. Instead of giving you the means of having different builds or different strategies, there definitely seems to be de facto best parts to have. Some parts are just flat out negatives for you and don't offer anything unless they're maybe used for a specific puzzle as a reason to use them. And you're not even really rewarded for fighting enemies. For everything that we play through, at one point I just said screw it and just ran full tilt through a level, and there is no real penalty or anything for it. And combat can get annoying with enemies who can attack or start their attack out of your range, enemies who are faster than you, and it just got to the point where if I'm ignoring the main gameplay loop of your title, or one of them, that is not good from a design standpoint. Platforming can be on the annoying side as well. The camera has a tendency to turn and move around while you're trying to make jumps, and for several areas where you are high up, the game commits the platforming sin of not allowing you to see your shadow, which makes it very hard to gauge perspective and distance between platforms or areas on different planes. And unfortunately, this is one of those games that we got to the game's kind of first real boss or skill check, and it just was too annoying for me to keep playing. With the enemy moving around so fast and getting free hits in, that I just said, I don't really want to play this game anymore. And that came after about 40 minutes to an hour or so of just wandering around and trying to just run away from a lot of these enemies. And with that, we're going to move on to something that is very much a completely different game. and that is StretchBot. This is a retro-minded 2D platformer where we play this robot, well, named Stretch, who is stuck in a post-apocalyptic world where a professor child is trying to take over using the power of crystals and to destroy basically Steam technology. Which I don't know if that is a play at Valve and Steam, but who knows there. And to save the world, our friend here is going to have to explore multiple levels, complete challenges, and collect the gears needed to unlock additional levels. The game itself, I don't know if this is kind of like a student project or a first-time game from the developer, as we ran into many weird bugs. So as right now the map is not properly being shown or being recorded on OBS. We had issues with sound and the music causing things not to be optimized right while we were playing this. And not only that, but there's also a problem where there's also no volume settings as well. In terms of the general gameplay, again, this is platforming as we all know and come to love. The unique element is that we have special abilities that Stretch can unlock and you can purchase using kind of the bolts that we get from enemies, such as a jetpack, projectile, and you also, as the name implies, stretch his arm out to do basic grappling. Now, despite kind of the presentation and kind of performance issues, from a level standpoint, StretchBot is not that bad of a game. Every level has unique elements to it, each world has specific objectives or hazards, and there's definitely this sense that the game was not, I guess, padded out, as in we're just going to repeat the same levels but we'll change the background. And every level does feel different in that regard. And while this may not be the best looking game or probably our most unique title, this feels like very much like a non-threatening game. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. And I would say if you're looking for a platformer and you don't mind kind of the general issues, definitely give this one a check. Despite the look of the game, I would not say that this is a game aimed for children. Some of the boss fights are very frustrating to fight, especially the first and final one. And again, some of the issues, as you can see with our map not properly loading here, or not being displayed on OBS, I don't know if we'll see fixes for them. But with that, let's move on to our next game. And we turn to one that definitely has some potential in terms of its gameplay loop, but I think suffers in the presentation point of view. And that is Soul Reaper. This was a title that the idea is that we play as the Grim Reaper over there, and evil is afoot, and it's up to us to explore the land, regain our power, and try to stop all the evil that is happening. The game itself plays RPG style, but you don't really have too much control over your units. This is a game that is very much about you creating a party, and then kind of letting the party dynamics and bonuses do their job, with very limited input by you. Now, as you can see, there's a lot kind of going on screen in terms of units, turn order, things along those lines. But the game itself is built on kind of like that Pokemon-esque, you gotta collect more characters, grow them in power, and repeat again and again. And the basic loop, I think, works. Progression works by, as you kill enemies, you'll gain experience, as we normally do. But you'll also gain the souls of the enemies that you kill. When you collect those souls, you'll be able to then apply them, or apply copies of those souls, into the same character. As that character levels up, they'll unlock new abilities, new perks, and so on and so forth. And every character in of itself comes with perks that will synergize with either characters of a similar class, similar element, where they're placed in a row or column, and you get the picture. And that is a very great way of kind of elevating the party-based dynamics. And as you can see, there's a lot of room for characters, and we were really just scratching the surface when we played Soul Reaper. The problem the game has is that the overall presentation definitely hurts the game. It starts off throwing a lot of stuff at the player without really properly explaining it. The whole map and kind of exploration feels kind of off as well. We ran into bugs with information like not appearing or not getting off the screen. And the game runs into some of the major traps that we see, such as telling the player important information, but saving it or not showing it before that information becomes relevant. For instance, like I just said, the whole idea of leveling up and upgrading characters, you're going to have to do that very early on, especially when the enemies start to level up, but that information doesn't show until several maps or several kind of screens in. There's a lot of information on the menu screen about equipment and stats and things like that could have also been streamlined to be a little bit more approachable or playable. And it just feels kind of like not everything is firing on all cylinders. The map exploration is kept very basic. You can dodge enemies, but you're not really doing all that much else. And due to how these systems of the game work, this is one of those titles where, because of your hands-off nature, you're going to either win a fight pretty much immediately, or you're going to be destroyed and there's not much you can do about it. And even with those misgivings, there is definitely something here with Soul Reaper. This is one of those games that does kind of feel mobile-esque in terms of the grind or general gameplay. But I do think that if this is one of those games that if it appeals to you, especially in terms of RPG progression and scaling, and that kind of growth and progression curve, I would say give this one a check. You may end up liking it. But if the presentation issues are too much for you, then I don't think the gameplay is going to be enough to win you over. But with that said, we're going to do our Patreon supporter and sponsor shoutout break now. And when we come back, we got a few more games left in this part. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. For our next game, we turn to one that definitely shows some potential for greatness, but could also crash and burn depending upon how they can manage this potential. But this is Terraforming Earth, a puzzle platformer, with the twist being that every level in this game outside of the opening tutorial is 100% procedurally generated. How this works is that it's very similar to the Lost Vikings from back in the day. You have three characters, these three robots here. Each one has a specific function or ability that is used to complete these tasks. So the pink bot can teleport through walls and can also scan the area. The yellow bot can fly as well as hover and propel the other two upward. And the blue bot can pick up objects and kind of carry them through areas. And the concept is that you're going to choose a level based on an objective you're trying to achieve, such as collect resources or move the story along, and then the game will procedurally generate the place itself. And it kind of works by the developer implementing various hazards or obstacles, whether they are doors that need to be opened via keys or switches, spikes, enemies, etc., etc., and then the game will build a level out of it. And it has that kind of sectional or compartmentalized kind of focus to it. Your mission in each level is to not lose your robots, which this becomes obviously harder as you play. And the game features a kind of a progression model in terms of research. Each day of in-game time, you spend plastic and metal to construct new copies of your 3 robots. Those copies go to work when you're not, or when you're out during a mission. So the Curie bots will do research, Spirey will do manufacturing, and Opie will be able to use or do more manual tasks. And this all adds into this kind of progression curve of going on the missions, collect the resources to add new features which can then be used in future missions, such as the new powers for characters, or be able to send your backup drones to collect resources while you're out on a mission. So the game has that kind of like almost like an idle progression of growing in scope to give you more things, which then will take longer but unlock new features, and will repeat again and again. And similar to something like with Mario Maker, because each mission is procedurally generated, you can up or down vote the mission, and if you do a mission that you like, the game will then show that mission in other players' copies. And really, like, this is a very ingenious concept for a game. Kind of mixing elements of puzzle platforming with Mario Maker with long-term progression and persistence. And that's why I'm kind of, I guess, like in the middle about recommending this game. There is a ton of potential here, but just in that vein, it could also just not end up working in terms of just the sheer number of things being balanced and being juggled. As you can see, we kind of ran to the level, kind of like the false or the breaking of the level right here. And due to how the hazards and design works, it is actually very easy to break some of these levels. I don't know if that was intentional or a undersight or oversight by a developer. So just using the bouncing, which is physics impacted or physics simulated, you can send a character up like this to get around almost any hazard. And from what I played of it on stream, I don't know what the end game of Terraforming Earth is going to be. Will there be boss encounters? What kind of new elements or hazards will be added? Will there be more of a focus on the research and progression to unlock new content? What we're playing is an early access build, so again, we don't have an answer to these questions right now. But like I said, this is one of those games that to me feels very appealing. And if the developer does manage to get all this stuff working, this could be a very amazing game to look at. But I'll be really curious to hear what you think about this one, for those of you who have played this. And with that, we have just enough time, I think, to cover one more game for this recap video. And we're going to turn to Bookbound Brigade. This is a Metroidvania whose story and concept I'll give points for originality on. It takes place in a world where literary characters come to life. Kind of similar to that whole Page Master, a movie from back in the 90s. Something has gone horribly wrong and the stories are all messed up, leading to famous fictional characters basically not playing to their roles. So like Dracula is now a pacifist, Robin Hood steals from the poor, and the game kind of makes or uses humor of these characters being all messed up. So they're on a mission through, I guess, the world of literacy in order to reclaim the pages and get their stories right. And this comes in the form of platforming and action-adventure gameplay. Your brigade is made up of these characters all basically in, I guess, huddle formation, and they all operate as a single unit. As you play through the game, you'll unlock additional characters who will join and provide specific functionalities and upgrades. A big point about Bookbound, besides the Metroidvania aspects, is unlocking formations. These are things that allow your characters to move or use specific abilities. There's a tall formation that basically condenses or pushes them all together that allows them to avoid wide hazards as well as attack smaller enemies. There's one that kind of flattens them to do a specific task, and this is used for combat and puzzle solving. Certain enemies can be shot forward or kind of launched at larger enemies to stun them, and depending upon the formation itself will determine how many characters are attacking at a given moment. There's also upgrades and persistent elements as you collect there's also a ton of MacGuffins in this game to go after, as well as being able to upgrade the various characters, give them new abilities, or give yourself just more options. And with all that said, Bookbound is a pretty good game in that regard. The problem, I think, comes with just some kind of a nagging points, or kind of like the rough edges of the gameplay. The first is that the map does not do a good job of giving you an idea about where you are in the world. Instead of representing every room or every screen, it goes for kind of a collection of screens and then chunks them into those individual rectangles. The problem is that it makes it very hard to figure out where you've been and exactly where you need to go to get back to something. This becomes a major point due to the amount of backtracking that Bookbound requires of you, both in terms of moving forward in the story and solving the many side quests and bonus collectibles. Another problem that I have, that I don't know if this was me or not, has to do with the formations themselves. The game requires you to basically push different button combinations in order to either activate special abilities or change formation, and I'm not sure if this was just my gamepad causing trouble due to the dead zone issue, or the buttons themselves in game, but I was not getting the responsiveness that I wanted out of this. There are times where I was just mashing the button presses to try and get the characters to switch, and it was not happening. And that is not good in a game that is this fast paced. There are several sections that will require you to switch between multiple formations at will in order to achieve a specific task. And whenever I have to fight the controls of a game, it really starts to frustrate me and kind of hurts the overall experience of it. And like I said, with the map system and kind of limited teleports or limited fast travels, it's very easy to get lost and be forced to do a lot of backtracking and moving around. And unfortunately, these issues kept me from really getting into this game. With that said though, I did again enjoy the general gameplay, and the story was interesting and different enough. And it definitely does capitalize on that Metroidvania concept of unlocking new abilities, new features, and then testing and challenging the players with that. But if you are looking for something that's, I think, more on the polished side overall, such as games like Hollow Knight, Bookbound may be a little disappointing in that regard. With that said, if you are looking, or if you need your Metroidvania fix, then this is still a pretty good game to go through. With that said, we are going to wrap up part 1 of our recap video for the indie games done in February. Check back real soon for part 2, and I'm thinking we're going to hit at least part 4 or part 5 due to the number of games that were submitted. And I would like to thank every developer who submitted a game. You'll find links to the respective games in this video in the description down below. And again, if you are working on an upcoming game and have something to showcase, please get in touch, as we are always looking for more games for future spotlights. With all that said, be sure to check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until our next video, have a great night. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.